Just business news with Stephen Carroll. Good morning, Stephen.
Hello, Catherine.
We're going to be starting off with a seduction effort by François Hollande, not the kind of seduction we've heard about in the headlines recently. This is a business seduction of foreign investors.
Indeed, continuing on with the sort of efforts we saw in San Francisco last week when he was meeting members of the tech community, François Hollande is now trying to convince foreign companies to commit to France and to invest here. Some 30 executives are attending what's being called an attractiveness council at the Elysee Palace later this Monday. The aim to encourage them to invest in France and, of course, to create jobs. Now, François Hollande will not only be selling the country's strong points, but he's also expected to unveil some measures to help companies do business here, including a simplified visa application process. Delana D'Souza has more.
Continuing the charm offensive, on Sunday, the heads of 26 companies that include Siemens, Volvo, GE and Nestlé met the French Prime Minister. François Hollande is attempting to increase levels of foreign investment in France. The companies invited have revenues of 850 billion euros combined. They're being convinced to invest more in France.
There are 20,000 foreign companies in France. They employ over 2 million workers, and this accounts for 30% of our annual exports.
Currently, 75% of the foreign companies present in France are from Europe, followed by 20% from the United States. The remaining come from Canada, Japan, and emerging markets. The objective of the so-called Attractiveness Council is to see increased levels of foreign investment by 40% in the next 3 years and see 300 new companies set up in France each year. The government is trying hard to improve its image, an image marred by one of Europe's highest labour costs and a reputation for government interference in business deals, like preventing Yahoo's takeover of Dailymotion. The president is likely to offer fast-tracking visas and simplifying customs procedures.
To Japan next, we're going to talk about some disappointing news for the country's economy. It grew by just 0.3% in the last 3 months of 2012, much less than had been expected. Overall, in 2013, the Japanese economy grew by 1.6%, just slightly more than in the previous years. Earlier, we spoke to our correspondent in Tokyo, Justin McCurry, about just why these figures are so disappointing.
They offer evidence that more than a year into Prime Minister Abe's premiership, more than a year into his great Abenomics project, the gains that we saw in the first few months of Abe's prime ministership seem to be fizzling out, and the Japanese economy, the third biggest economy in the world, isn't growing as quickly as some officials might have hoped. And to put this into an international perspective, the rate of growth in the last quarter in Japan was slower than that in the US and in the Eurozone. So there'll be certainly some disappointment on that. Now, Abenomics is now into its second year, and there are certain things that Prime Minister Abe had hoped would be in place. There were signs of dramatic improvement that he would have hoped to have seen by now, and they're simply not there. And we're talking here about significant improvements in the export market, in private consumption, in capital investment by Japanese corporations, and rises in wages. And I'm afraid those important factors don't seem to be moving in the right direction.
We'd like to take a look now at how that news affected the markets, and the Nikkei in Tokyo is actually in positive territory. It's up around 0.56%, as you can see there on the screen. This after the bank lending rates in China reached a record level in January, staving off fears of a credit crunch that had given investors some worry back in December. The Hang Seng and the Shanghai Composite up almost 1%, as you can see there.
OK, let's run us through some of the day's company news now, Steve.
Yeah, we're going to start with the French company Bouygues, which has taken a €1.4 billion write-down on its stake in the engineering firm Alstom. Bouygues owns about 29% of Alstom, which had slashed its profit forecast earlier this month. The firm has suffered from a collapse in orders from its power business and is selling other assets in an effort to shore up its balance sheet. The chairman of bailed-out lender Bankia says the Spanish government will probably sell its stake in stages. Jose Ignacio Gorelzari told the newspaper ABC that the privatisation would follow the model of Lloyds in the United Kingdom. Bankia was the worst hit of the Spanish lenders by the property market collapse there. The Spanish government owns more than 2/3 of it, but will have to sell its stake by 2017. The crowdfunding website Kickstarter says hackers have gained access to some of its users' personal details. The company's chief executive says usernames, email addresses and phone numbers were leaked, but not credit card details. It's recommending users should change their passwords and says it's working to find the source of the breach.
Thanks very much, Stephen Carroll, with a roundup of the business news here on France 24. It's time now for us to take a look at web news, starting with an online